Hi BookTube, it's Zina from Beating Around the Books, and I would like to do my November reading wrap-up, which is, well, I'd wanted to do bi-weekly or weekly things, but clearly that didn't happen last month. I don't know, my bandwidth was just taken up with other stuff. Yeah, so it was non-fiction November, and I read quite a lot of non-fiction compared to my usual reading, I would say. As was to be expected, very few of the books that I read were actually on my pile of possibilities, because I am a mood reader after all. I say read, this was also very, very audiobook heavy, possibly even more so than other months. I don't know, this month was, I don't know, just so difficult to actually read physical books. Anyway, before I get to that though, I would like to remind people that my House of Leaves read-along has just started yesterday. There's still plenty of time to catch up and to take part. I have created a Discord server for this purpose because our group is relatively large, and I decided that Voxer might be too chaotic. So if you're in for that, reading it over the course of 2 months, so December and January, so there's plenty of time to take, I don't know, take a break during the Christmas holidays or whatever. And because it's a Discord and we have different channels for different sections of the book, it's not so, I don't know, the risk of having spoilers is not so high because you can just choose whenever you're gonna read messages in a specific channel. Anyway, I'm gonna link the Discord server down below, and if you're interested, feel free to check it out. Okay, now to the reading wrap-up. As you can imagine, as I always say, my memory is terrible, so this will not be very detailed. I think there was a total of 11 books, and the first one was indeed a non-fiction. It was Giulia Enders' Dame mit Charme, which I can't remember the exact English title anymore, but I talked about it in my non-fiction November audiobook recommendations thing. I think it was a gut, and then I don't know, oh god, something about an undervalued organ, I can't remember. So basically it's about gut health and all sorts of things that have to do with that. The author is a medical doctor who just sort of developed a keen interest in the gastrointestinal tract, and specifically the gut. And she has different chapters that outline different aspects of gut health and how it influences the rest of your body, and also how it is influenced in terms of the microbiome, stress, nutrition, whatever. She speaks a lot. How do you say this? She summarizes or quotes a lot from studies, and makes it sort of understandable in layman's terms without infantilizing it too much. Is that actually the word? Or I don't know. She doesn't dumb it down, let's put it that way. But it's still very definitely directed at the sort of popular science market. So yeah, that was a rather interesting read. I'm quite surprised that I haven't actually read it before. And yeah, whatever. I feel like I'm repeating the stuff I said in that audiobook rec video, so let's just move on. There's not going to be any info on star ratings because I'll probably not remember. This will probably be 4 or 5. Okay, then I listened to My Dark Vanessa by, what is her name again? Kate Elizabeth Russell? Yes, that's her name. I had been very torn on this one. I've been very, very interested in it because somehow I don't know, there was just a lot of press around it way, way, way before its release. And then for some reason was put off by it again, decided it was not for me. And then I think it was Ros from Scallydandling About the Books who spoke about it so favorably that I thought, okay, I'm going to give it a go. And I must say I'm really glad that I did, because it, contrary to my understanding that, you know, what put me off when I thought about it a bit longer, it was actually, it portrays it really well. Hang on, let's start. What is it about? So there's oh god, so we have a dual timeline. We have a woman in her, I think, early 30s, who is reflecting back on her relationship with a teacher when she was a 15-year-old. So, you know, the grooming that happened and how he manipulated her, basically. And the parts about her as a 15-year-old are written not in retrospect, but sort of, you know, from the viewpoint of the 15-year-old, so to speak, which is incredibly frustrating sometimes, and, you know, touching, because you kind of, you know, you want to sort of go and shake her and go, don't you see what's happening? Oh, of course you don't see what's happening, you know. And then the interesting part is, as a 30-year-old, she is still reluctant to actually name what happened to her as, you know, abuse. She still holds on to that idea that, you know, there was consent and that this was a love story. And so, which can also be quite frustrating for a reader, but I think the portrayal of that is incredibly good in terms of, you know, how do you say this? Like, you know, how is it PTSD influences survivors of that sort, and how difficult it is to come to terms with these types of traumatic experiences, and how that's, you know, it's such a difficult and nuanced sort of topic. I think I'm rambling now, but I was really, really positively surprised by this. Great. Let's just leave it at that. I think I gave it 5 stars in the end. Then I listened to an essay collection by Emilie Pine, Notes to Self. And I can't tell you very much about this anymore. It clearly didn't leave a lasting impression. I think as I was listening to it, I found some points very poignant. It was, I think, well, a lot about, you know, being a woman in the 21st century. The first essay was incredibly good and moving because it was about her relationship to her alcoholic father and about how difficult it is for her to, how she couldn't cut him out of her life, but how obviously being, you know, remaining in a relationship with him was incredibly painful as well. And yeah, that was a really, really good essay, but I think the other ones were more forgettable. I'm sorry. Well, I think I still gave it 4 stars at the time, but now I can't remember what happened elsewhere. Anyway, the next one was also on my list of recommendations. It was Natalie Haynes' Pandoras Jar, Women in the Greek Myths. This is looking at a host of different women from Greek myth, and she examines the different ways in which these women were portrayed in different sources, and sort of shows us that often the portrayal that we are familiar with is not the only one possible, and that often these sort of images have been, I guess, reduced to a very specific stereotype, whereas in the original myths, in the original sources, I'm not saying original myths, sorry, but in the different sources, there's quite a lot of different aspects and changes to the stories, so that they're a lot more multifaceted. Um, and I found this utterly enjoyable. I like this better than her fiction that I've read, although I would certainly also read more fiction by her. That's not to say, that that was bad, but I think I liked this approach a lot better. Yeah, then there was Going Postal by Terry Pratchett. This was a read-along hosted by Katja Weinert. I'm gonna link to her channel. We did like 2 live streams about it, and she is now hosting another read-along of a Terry Pratchett novel for Christmas. It will be Hogfather, just for your information. And then from the next year, she wants to do 1 book every 2 months, and they're going to be introductions to the different sort of storylines, or the different how do you say this, storylines that are within the Discworld. Like, I think the first one will be witches, and then possibly the next one will be death, or possibly the wizards. I can't remember, but I'm going to link to that in the description, so you can have a look if you would like to join. There's also a Discord server for that. Okay, then on to the next nonfiction. This one was actually on my pile of possibilities. It's Max Czollek's Gegenwartsbewältigung. I think I've spoken about this twice already. So this is a contemporary polemic about the state of society, a German society. It was written during the pandemic. He addresses mainly anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and racism in general in German society, how German society seems to be blind on its right eye, as we say. He criticizes the idea of a German leading culture. So this is sort of, I guess, a development from his previous book, which was Desintegriert euch, and he gives quite a lot of really interesting examples throughout German history, but also, like I said, contemporary politicians' blunders. And yeah, I thought this was brilliant. I do think I need to buy the printed copy, because again, it was sometimes quite intellectual, and I think even though I could certainly follow all the main points, I think it would it warrants a reread. But yeah, I thought this is great. If you do read German, I can highly recommend it. And he argues for sort of a radical intersectional approach and intersectional solidarity between different marginalized groups. Let's leave it at that. Then I listened to Hood Feminism by Mikki Kendall. I think this was everywhere. I'm a little bit late to the party. I had it on my list for ages, but somehow didn't get around to it. Really interesting look at feminism and how white feminism has, well, it actually says this, right? Oh no, it says notes from the women that the movement forgot. So it criticizes, I guess, the sort of white middle class feminism that seems to only be engaged in, well, problems that pertain to white middle class women. And Nikki Kendall, looks at this from a very different point of view. Someone who, herself grew up in, did you say, yeah, working class conditions, and argues that things like poverty, access to food, etc. I can't think right now. Are also feminist issues, and yeah, basically points out the blind spots that white feminism has. This was really good, although I would not necessarily recommend the audiobook. It was fine, but she reads it herself, and that's also fine in this case. The issue is more that you can really tell. Sometimes there's these weird jumps, and you can really tell that one part must have been recorded at a different time than the other. But it's not like, she reads one chapter. It happens in between where maybe, she needed to like re-record something. Excuse me. And the tone of her voice is quite different in a lot of places, and I found that a bit irritating. Not to say that it was terrible, but yeah, it's not the best audiobook, I guess. Not the best experience you could have. Okay, then on to another feminist read, which was Margarete Stokowski's Die letzten Tage des Patriarchats. It's called The Last Days of the Patriarchy. This is an article collection of articles she wrote in a different, I think, is it different pop? She has a column, but I think there were also columns from, I think they were like in two different publications. So I think these articles, I don't know, they're written over the course of maybe 3 or 4 years. I can't remember. And she collected them. Well, she edited this herself. She also added context, in at what kind of time this was written, in response to what, and also whether things have changed since then. So it's not just, you don't just get the thing and a date and that's it. I like Margarete Stokowski anyway. I also read her previous book, Untenrum Frei, a few months ago. I don't know when, this year anyway. I do follow her on Twitter and would read her column if it wasn't behind a paywall from a magazine that I will not support. But I do, I like what she's got to say about, I guess, German society and politics. Yeah. Whatever. If you're German, you'll probably have heard of her. She's an interesting voice, I think. Yeah. Then the next one was Barracoon by Zora Neale Hurston, which was, wait, how do you say this? Okay, Barracoon, what is this? So Zora Neale Hurston went to interview Cujo Lewis, who was the last sort of witness or survivor of the very last black cargo, which was already after the transatlantic slave trade had been banned. But, it still continued. And over the course of, I think, no, she visited him in 2 different times, and over the course of several weeks, she went and interviewed him about his experiences, and she writes it down in his sort of vernacular, and how do you say this? I found this incredibly good to have read, just because of what kind of a document it is, but I wouldn't say that it is the most engaging book as a, you know what I mean? Oh, it sounds terrible. I think I would have preferred it if there had been more context, if there had been more, because this was made as an sort of, I can't remember what it was called, but maybe an ethnography sort of thing. Anyway, so the interviews were conducted as part of sort of academic research in a way, and I guess in this instance, I would have liked it to be more academic, to have more references that go beyond his personal story, if that makes sense. Yeah. Then the last one I listened to was I'm Afraid of Men by Vivek Shraya, which is a trans, Vivek Shraya is a trans woman artist, and this is sort of a prolonged essay, to be perfectly honest, because it's very, very short. And well, she speaks about why she's afraid of men. This encompasses both her experiences when she was growing up, still as a boy, and the bullying that they subjected her to, or I guess him at the time. I don't know how you do this. And how that led to him to develop this sort of hyper masculine mask, to try and fit in, and then almost overdo it. And then of course how after transitioning, how she then experiences male aggression and, well, toxic masculinity on a whole, in a very different light again. I thought this was really insightful, and worth a read, and it's very, very short. And I can't speak longer because my battery is about to run out. But I've just about got to the end. So let me know what you've read in nonfiction November, or for November in general. You read any of these? Have you got more coherent thoughts on them than me? That would be always appreciated. And like I said, House of Leaves, link downstairs, and also the thing to Katja Weinert's ongoing Discworld read along. Okay, have a lovely day. Bye bye.